And he will say, in a very ironic line, what if Odysseus had returned, had made it home at last? But now it's clear as day, the man will come no more. This is, of course, their final day, which makes it even more bizarre. He says to Telemachus, you need to go tell your mom, she needs to make sure to marry one of us, and then once one of us is married, it's all over and it's done with. Telemachus responds at 380 by saying, I don't delay my mom's marriage, not a moment, I press her to wed. The man who takes her heart. I'll shower myself with boundless gifts, but I shrink from driving mother from our house. This takes us back to the beginning of the poem. So he vowed. And Athena set off uncontrollable laughter in the suitors, 383. Crazed them out of their minds. Mad, hysterical laughter. Seemed to break from the jaws of strangers, not their own. And the meat they were eating oozed red with blood. This is what Fagles means by giving this book the title of portents. In other words, there should be, people should be able to see this. Of course, by the way, remember as well that Odysseus' men ate bloody meat that did not really die for the sun god's cattle, and for that they were all jacked too. So we're seeing this. Then we're told at line 390, the inspired seer Theoclymenus wailed out in their midst. Now, this is powerful stuff. Poor men, what terror is this that overwhelms you so? Night shrouds your heads, your faces down to your knees. Cries of mourning are bursting into fire. This sounds like something in the biblical text we would hear from Jeremiah, for example, predicting the Babylonians are coming and Jerusalem is about to fall. Cheeks riveting tears, he says. This is what he sees. The walls and the handsome crossbeams dripping dank with blood. You can see this in your mind's eye if it was made into a movie where you have this vision and there's blood even dripping from the ceiling. Ghosts, look, thronging the entrance, thronging the court, go trooping down to the world of death and darkness, taking us back to Odyssey 11, obviously. The sun is blotted out of the sky, like a passage from the minor prophet Joel, for those of you who know your Hebrew Bible. Look there, a lethal mist spreads all across the earth. We think about the way mist from Athena has protected Odysseus several times in the Odyssey, and he says, I can see it all. At that, we're told, they all break out into peals of laughter aimed at the seer, Eurymachus. He says it. The man is raving. Quick, my boys, hustle him outside into the meeting grounds. The light of day. Everything here he thinks is as dark as night. Eurymachus, the inspired prophet, countered, when I want your escort, I'll ask for it myself. I have eyes and ears. In other words, I can see. This reminds us of the lines that Jesus Christ will say, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Here we're playing the same game. I have eyes and ears, and both my feet still, and a head that's fairly sound, nothing to be ashamed of. These will do to take me past those doors. Oh, he says at line 410, I can see it now. The disaster closing on you all. There's no escaping it, no way out. This will be Jean-Paul Sartre's No Exit when we study it together. Not for a single one of you suitors, wild, reckless fools, plotting outrage here, the halls of Odysseus, great and strong as a god. With that, Theoclymenus leaves. The suitors are trading their snide glances, and they start heckling Telemachus, and, of course, Odysseus, without even realizing that he's there. Look what your man dragged in this mangy tramp, scraping for bread and wine. Not fit for good hard work, the bag of bones, a useless dead weight on the land. The dark irony is, of course, they're the useless dead weight on the land. And then this charlatan up and apes the prophet. Take it from me, you'll be better off by far. Toss your friend on a slave ship. So they jeered, we're told, at line 428. But the prince paid no attention, silent, eyes riveted on his father, always waiting the moment he'd laid hands on that outrageous mob. But we're told all the while, Penelope, final lines of Book 20, had placed her cart chair within earshot at the door, so she could catch words, each word they uttered in the hall. Laughing rowdily, men prepared their noonday meal. Succulent, rich, they butchered her, quite a herd. But as for supper, what could be less enticing than what a goddess and a powerful man would spread before them soon? We'll call it, of course, the Last Supper. A groaning feast, for they've been first to plot their vicious crimes. So the poet wants to let us know, it's coming, it's definitely coming. Let's jump to level 2 and 3 quickly. At 2a, I'll come back to what I began my lecture with. Always respecting the gods is the central theme of the Iliad and the Odyssey. because they are religious texts along with being adventure texts. If you don't, you're jacked. Now we'll place this alongside of a text like Milton's Paradise Lost, so you can write that one down in 3a when we come to our study of Paradise Lost later. Another major message is, of course, everything hinges on the interpretation of signs. If you miss it, you're jacked, right? In the end, another message is we all get what we deserve. This is almost that karmic law. This is, in many ways I've said it, this is the most religious text book of this text, book 20, because it really wants to drive that point home. All of the signs were there. All of the portents and omens were there. And Theoclymenus can see it, but they won't listen. They refuse to listen. It will remind us later when we meet Plato's Republic in the opening lines, how can we hear if we refuse to listen? The suitors definitely refuse to listen. The symbolism in 2b, well, all of the signs are clearly messages sent from the gods. The challenge is how you interpret, and that takes us to the irony, doesn't it? How do you interpret what you see? And there's a lot of irony. The ox hoof is obviously a symbol, and obviously there's irony as well. It's all going to come back, isn't it? Because, ironically, we are on Apollo's feast day. Apollo, the one who will shoot arrows at the beginning of the Iliad, because irreverence for the gods. That's exactly why. 3a, of course, as we said, the Iliad begins with that irreverence and the shooting of a large number of the Greek troops by Apollo, and it will end with Odysseus as well, of course, shooting a large number because of irreverence. Think about the way in which this text then is instructional. Notice, for example, that I mentioned the Hebrews 13:2 passage, some have entertained angels unaware. Now, of course, our study of biblical text is literary, not religious, in 303, obviously. But we have to point out that when you were, as someone listening to this poem being recited, the Odyssey, and the same is true of the Iliad, this was a religious text. There was no questioning about whether these gods are real or not. For example, if we're talking religiously about the Hebrews 13:2 passage, well, obviously you have to believe in angels for that to be a religious text that you can believe in. The same is true of the Odyssey, and here, we will assume, most listeners of the Odyssey, as the poet would give the poem, they really believed in this stuff. So obviously for them, they're like, how in heaven's name can these suitors not understand that their doom is hanging over their head, to quote the poem itself? What is for you the great text of instruction at 3a that kind of teaches these important truths for you? What is your favorite text about learning to read the signs? We're going to definitely play this game with Paradise Lost, because Paradise Lost is the grand argument, that attempt to explain or justify the ways of God to men. We'll come back to it in our study of Plato's Paradise Lost. Of course, at 3b, you knew this kind of question was coming. What was the time you missed the signs? What was the time you understood the signs? In other words, what was the time, looking back in hindsight, you were like, man, I should have seen this coming. How could I not have seen this coming? And then what was the time that you did see it coming? And then when it finally happened, you were like, yeah, I guess I saw this coming all along. Ball players love this question because you can ask them, the last time you suffered a really, really tragic loss, could you have seen it coming if you could have understood the signs? And a lot of times athletes will say, yeah, I probably should have seen it coming, I just didn't, because I was blind to it. What was the time, this is a funny question, and yet it's probably one that you'll resonate. What was the time you had to duck out of your ox hoof? In other words, somebody jacked on you, and you had to somehow protect yourself. What was the time when you were laughed at? But you were right, but you were laughed at. You tried to maybe make an observation or one or whatever, and you were ridiculed or laughed at or rejected. What was the time that happened for you? And you had to kind of bear that with a sardonic grin, is the language. Well, that's book 20, and obviously we're getting set up for book 21, the stringing of the bow. Penelope's about to arrive and say, all right, I'll marry one of you guys if you can do what Odysseus could do, string the bow and shoot it through a bunch of axe heads, and we're going to have to talk about what that even means. And then finally, of course, when none of them can do it, Odysseus will be the man who will do it, and book 22, the famous Jack book of all Jack books, and we'll get to it. So come back and we'll enjoy ourselves with book 21 before we get to book 22. Thank you.